Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Matthew Barcelow, and I'll be serving as moderator of this event. Now it is my privilege to announce our first session speaker of the day, Dr. Lars Sorqvist. Lars, please correct me if I mispronounce that.
Sorqvist in Swedish, but in Sorqvist in English.
Okay. So, Dr. Lars has been affiliated with Sandholm Associates AB since 1995 and currently leads operations in the form of CEO. He also works as an associate professor in the Royal Institute of Technology and professor at Shanghai University. In 2008, he became an associate professor at KTH. He is vice president of the International Academy for Quality and deeply involved in both U.S. and Chinese national quality organizations. Hello and welcome.
Thank you, Matthew. So I should just share my PowerPoint here. And yes, it's really nice to be here with all of you. And I think it's a very interesting topic to discuss, how to get higher quality in education. And my presentation is about what I in more for fun called Education 4.0, as we talked a lot about Quality 4.0 today and Industry 4.0. I think it could be interesting to discuss about how new technology affect the way we educate. And I'm not a teacher in that way, but I've been working about 40 years with teaching, communicating my research results, working on universities. I'm an CEO of a training company, so we train management teams and quality specialists and so on. So for most of my life, I've been a teacher. And it's very interesting to see how much has happened the last years. We'll see here. Yeah. And as I said here, yes, we are today talking a lot about what's the effect will be in the future and is on its way to become at the moment due to the digitalization. And maybe it's time to start to talk about something like Education 4.0 connected to Industry 4.0. And I think it's quite interesting because we have had a lot of historical opportunities to work online with education and training. I remember the first time I really started to try online training, that was 1996. And we for the first time, it was very new for me. We did a seminar together with Joseph Uran that at that time was broadcasted through satellites from the United States, and it works very well. The technology was really in place, and then it took many years before I got another opportunity. People wasn't so interested in that kind of technology in that time. In the early 2000s, my company, we developed some e-learning programs, and it was very tough to sell because the interest was not very high. People wanted to be in classroom. In between, we had digital meetings, but yeah, it was a quite weak interest from the students. And then suddenly this happened, COVID-19. And just overnight, we became 100% digital. First of all, we was quite scared. We didn't know how to handle it. We didn't know it would work at all. We had very, very limited practical experiences. We had to invest in new technology. We had to try to figure out how it worked in a pedagogical way to work online. And it was a lot of try and error. But what was very interesting, it worked from my experience, a lot better when we expected in the beginning. We was actually very surprised. And at the same time, we learned a lot. And part of those learnings is what I want to share today. And in my company and in my university, we had been working a lot to get this to become better and better. And now we think that the new normal, or what we are focusing on today, that is what we call blended learning. We try to combine face-to-face classroom education with online education to get maximum out of it. And of course, this is not new in itself, because historically, before online learning, we was also blending, but then we was blending different ways of acting face to face. But just to get an overview, there are so many different ways of delivering knowledge. And of course, to be able to combine this and create variation will probably create a much more interesting and stimulating way to learn for the students. And we also see another reason today, at least in Sweden, we talk a lot about on this based on a sustainability perspective. Why should we have students to travel a lot? Sweden is a big country with a rather small number of citizens. So we have to travel, we have to go by car, by train, by bus, by aircraft, and so on, to get to schools, to get to training, and so on. And by going to a more blended way of teaching, we could almost half the transportation we have seen. And that's also a sustainability thing. And it also makes it easier for people. People growing up on the countryside, they have to go to the big cities for taking part in university training or other kind of training programs. And of course, now people partly could stay in their hometowns and join education in new ways. Some overall learnings, first of all, on a more pedagogical perspective, things that we found out the hard way. Rather soon we understood that what worked well in the face-to-face classroom, in real life situation, didn't work very well if you just made a copy into the online format. First of all, we need to work with shorter lectures. We have to have more variations. We have to have much more time for discussion and reflections. We found out that we had to use those breakout rooms functions a lot because staying concentrated on a computer screen, 15-20 minutes, not much more than that, then we'd start to lose the students. Compared to when you're in a classroom, you could have much more natural variations there. So you can have a lecture for maybe 45 minutes or something like that without any problems. So we had to break our courses down into smaller pieces. We still do long lectures, but we break them down, so we mix the speeches with discussions and breakout rooms and reflections and so on, and that way it become almost as good as when we were in the classroom. Actually, in some areas, of course, we can even see advantages on working online. For instance, we do quite a lot of training where we use software and computers, and putting our students in a classroom, each with a computer, doing some kind of case studies and so on that we did before. It's much better to do it online, because then we can share the screens and we can in another way learn from each other. That was impossible when we were in the classroom. So we also see area that we have developed positively. One thing that we learned that is that technology is very, very important. We had to invest in a lot, and we have some different levels. Just now I'm traveling, so I'm on an hotel room, but I anyhow had to bring a camera, illumination, and a good microphone and other things to be able to do it, and double screen setup and so on. When we do it from our classrooms, we have invested in specific studios with a little bit better equipment, and when we really want to go professional, we work with a professional studio to really broadcast things in the best possible manner. So this is something that is worth thinking about, and I don't think it's a problem, because we also by ourselves could save a lot by being online compared to what we did before. For instance, we need less classrooms and things like that. So even if we have had some investment in technology. We could say more from needing less lecture rooms and so on. I think more difficult is something that we found out and that we still struggle with, that is also that we need good technology on the learning side of the training, and how to get our students to get like good microphones, good cameras and so on. Because when we do training, of course, we interact a lot, and especially as we have found out that we need to spend quite high percentage of the time in breakout rooms to get good learnings. Then if people are not able, our students are not able to see each other through good cameras and so on, and hear each other in a good way through good microphones, then of course we lose a lot of the possibility to learn. We haven't not really figured out exactly how to do it, but we have started to become more and more clear to our students that they should have good technology. We have even put up a list with recommendations what kind of technology we want them to have. But it's a little bit difficult, and it's difficult to force them to invest in things. But I think we should, if we really should get what we could get out of online learning, there has to be good technology, good platform in both ends. And it's not just about technology, it's also about behaviors. To get people, for instance, to have their camera on when we are doing lectures, especially when they are in breakout room and discussions and so on. I used to use this picture with a man with this basket here over his head when I start up the lectures online, and say, usually when we are in a classroom, you don't behave like that, so switch on your camera. Because we lose a lot in communication if we can't see each other. And it's similar with the microphones, but opposite. Switch on on them so we don't disturb each other when we are not speaking. Also, it's a responsibility from the participants, the students, that are a little bit more difficult to fulfill when we do online training, as people has to really become active. And of course, in a classroom, you can see your students in another way, and you can see what they are doing, if they are playing with the telephones or whatever. If they are online, it's a little bit more difficult. So it's a question of taking this responsibility and being active, taking part in discussions, asking questions, and all other behaviors that are here. And we don't know what will happen in the future, but I suppose that demands on technology and behaviors and so will be higher and higher. When studying what's discussed, like the Meta or Facebook's metaverse and things like that, it sounds like saying science fiction, but so many times in history I said that will never happen, and then I have been wrong. So I will not underestimate the future possibilities to train online. Another thing that we have found that I think is very interesting, I want just to share it first, what has happened. If we go back in history, we was like acting like this. We was doing traditional learning or teaching that mostly was or it was just face-to-face. Of course, some literature study and some other things were there, but it was the traditional way of working. And then suddenly, COVID came. We get, as I said, 100% digital, and we learned a lot, and we developed the digital way of working. But in some ways, we became unbalanced. So now we want to get back to some kind of more balanced way of learning by also focusing more on the face-to-face learning. But I think it's quite interesting, because if we really succeed, what we have found is then we have to work equally hard to develop the face-to-face training, because now we could take away a lot of the theoretical stuff and things like that fits very well on the online training. And then we also have to develop the face-to-face training in another way. There is a need to develop face-to-face training that is based on much higher level of interacting. The old way of being in a big hall and just having a lecture and one-way communication, that we do online. And then we have to work in a completely different way when we are at the school. We have to spend much more time on the social side of the training, networking, reflecting, being interactive between the students, and so on. We also talk, and I will be back on that on the next picture, a lot on going towards the active learning, the flipped classroom, that we also put more and more responsibility on the students to be prepared to be able to do more and better learning. Of course, one key issue here is also to have time to learn, because I think too often students they schedule on the time they can see in the course schedule. Now we have a lecture there, one there and one where. But when we go to the online learning, and especially to the flipped classroom, that they also have to plan more for all the other preparation that they are supposed to do that are not in the schedule, and that's again put in higher demand on taking responsibility on the student side. We also discuss quite a lot on the needs of a new, more creative learning environment that we really could relax, and there's much better designed for reflections and interactive things and so on. Actually, from the company side, we are building a new training center in Portugal. There's a picture from that area now, just in the nature, to try to stimulate new ways, because all the as I said, the more theoretical stuff and so on that we put in online, and then we want to have another experience when we meet. And we can also see, of course, the effect when the best before date on knowledge becomes shorter and shorter, so we are getting more into never-ending learning that we have to continue to develop, and there's ways of learning both the face-to-face and online is very good in this way. Then over to the active learning idea, that is something that is discussed a lot, of course, in universities and in pedagogical groups today, how we could get students to become more prepared before the class, and also, of course, do some work after, and giving them a lot of even recorded online material before, and how we use the literature and things like that. And that's, I think, is very, very interesting, but it's also difficult. We had quite high expectations, but we have learned the hard way that we have to take it a little bit easy. So we have to slowly flip the classroom, not too fast, because it's a question again about having the students to really be prepared. Because as an example, some years ago, I started up with this with a lot of energy, and I made a lot of cases and so that should be prepared. And then about half of the students, then they come to the lecture, hadn't prepared themselves. And of course, the lecture didn't work at all. So it's a question, do the students really do the preparations? Of course, we could use e-learning and things like that, so they had to pass different quizzes and so on to be able to come to the lectures. But I personally be more in really getting commitment and motivation from inside of the person. So it's a question of really committing people to this and to get them really go to the school, to the training program for getting new knowledge, not just to get an exam or something like that. So it's an to me quite difficult situation that we have to learn more about. But I believe strongly in this, and now we in our courses we do it in some areas to get more learnings, and also get the students to get used to be better prepared and to study things before they go to the lecture, to be able to have a much higher value in the discussions in the classroom. Another thing that is talked a lot about, that we also had high expectations on, that is what we called hybrid lectures. And that means that we have people at the same time in the classroom and online. And we started to work with this. We immediately understood that we have to get new technology. This is a picture from one of our classrooms. I want the pen here. You can see here, we have computer screens on the walls. Now they are off in its picture. I hadn't no one. But here, the students that are online, they are seen here. So they are present in the classroom on screens, and we also have installed cameras and microphones all over. So it's easy for the one that are online. There is one camera, I don't think, maybe you can see it here, that give them a view of the entire classroom. It's another camera that give them a view of the teacher, and so on. So we could, both the one that are in the classroom could see the one that are online, and the one that are online could see the one in the classroom and the teacher. And we believe a lot in this, but it hasn't worked that good as we hope, because it's more about the human side, because as a teacher, you can't be present in a similar way in the digital and in the physical classroom at the same time. When you are teaching, you are, of course, then mostly in the physical classroom. So the online training will be not as good as when we do 100% online training when we are hybrid. And another thing is that the pedagogics is different. When we are in the classroom, the lectures become a little bit longer. It takes more time to do group discussions in small groups, because it's a change over time when you send them to another room or a number of rooms and then to get them back, compared to when you do it on Zoom, because then you can just press the button and then they are in the breakout rooms. You can make a short breakout room discussion for 5-10 minutes. Sometimes it's enough, while that doesn't work in the physical classroom. So there will be a mismatch between those. So we have actually decided that hybrid for us, that is the last resort. If something is a little ill, not that bad so they can't listen, but that bad so they can't go to the classroom or such things, then we use it. But we are very clear that you don't get the same quality on hybrid as you get in the face-to-face classroom and the online classroom that is 100%. So that's a learning we had. Another thing that we also are working sometimes with, that is e-learning. And I think we also had higher expectations on e-learning. We now see e-learning more like a good learning method in an more combined situation, in a blended learning perspective, but for some simple things to be learned, like when we do white belt training and more awareness training, e-learning could be good. But for more complicated things, it's like a support issue, but I don't think it could take over, because we need the interaction. So most of what we are doing online and so that is in real life, that we do it and in real time, that we do it, broadcasting thing, having a dialogue, asking questions and so on. And some recorded material could be in the flipped classroom, things that are for preparations either before or some of it after a class. So that was what I wanted to share with you here today, some of our experiences. And I think that, of course, this will continue to develop a lot in the future. And still we have now it's like 3 years of experiences after COVID came. And combining that with just me, I have 40 years in face-to-face classroom, and Sandom as a company have been there for 51 years now. Of course, there is so much more to learn on this, but one of the findings here that I think is very important, it's not just to develop the online classroom, the digital classroom. It's probably even more important to, when we go online and stay blended, that I think we should do to develop the face-to-face classroom. Because that classroom has to be completely different to really match up with the online training. Yes, thanks a lot.